I have this tweet from James O'Keefe. This video was pretty shocking to watch. There have been reports about buses that have been trafficking illegal immigrants. In fact, I can say this as well. I have personally confirmed the existence of major airline boarding passes that state no name given. This story was broken by Ashley St. Clair. We're still waiting on vetting and development. So by all means, anyone in the press who wants to doubt this story, you feel free to do so, but I will put my reputation on the line and say, I have reviewed the materials. It's more than just a boarding pass saying no name given. We've had our own employees at Timcast witness on these flights, doing these events, planes full of illegal immigrants carrying these bags with instructions. They don't speak English. Someone is doing this. And it may be not just, we know the Biden administration has been facilitating much of this. We know this because back in 2021, there was a report about migrant children, illegal immigrant children, being smuggled on flights in the late hours, or the early hours of the morning, into places like Tennessee and Westchester. And we from those stories and from the expansion of them, so we know that exists. We also know that yes, Greg Abbott and other governors have been sending illegal immigrants deeper into the country in various places. The question is, why is this happening? Why isn't our border being secured? Why is it that when James O'Keefe in this video it's crazy. They follow a bus carrying these illegal immigrants. The bus tries to hit them. The bus tries fleeing and swerving through the road, going on and off exits, trying to lose them because journalists are following them, and then actually stops and does not release its passengers and then leaves again. Something about what they're doing has them scared someone will find out they're doing it. But I'll give you one quick story that happened to me personally. Outside of this, Ashley St. Clair showed me the materials. It's a boarding pass that says no name given. Do you want to board a major airliner with people? Our security, our TSA has no idea who these people are, where they come from. I was in Chicago over the holiday. We flew on a private jet. How about that? It's really fun, isn't it? And our shuttle bus driver said the other day, a 737 came in, and we were told by our bosses that it was the Blackhawks. How fun does that? Oh, you're gonna get to go service a plane, pull out the luggage for a famous hockey team. He said when they pulled up to the plane and opened it up, there were 3 garbage bags in the forward cargo hold. That's it. No luggage, nothing. They then found out that the entire plane, 140 passengers, were illegal immigrants, and he said it was Swift Air. I don't know. That's what he told me. I asked him, did they lie to you, claiming it was the Blackhawks, because you would not have served that plane had you known you'd be facilitating illegal immigration? And he went, bingo, exactly. So my question now is, with all of this news breaking, and this is a massive story, I'm interested in your view on what's going on. I want to know how you plan to handle it, what you would do, and I also want to know your position on how do we handle the fact that there are federal law enforcement officers actually facilitating this?
Yeah, well, I think it's, again, one of these, when it comes to the media, third rail issues, when you name what's going on, so forget the labels, great replacement theory, whatever, just forget the labels. What's going on is, what's the most parsimonious explanation is, there is a facilitation of mass illegal migration into the United States to secure lasting electoral majorities for the Democratic Party. And the reason, that's not a conspiracy theory is it is a pre-stated strategy of Democrats dating back to about 10 years ago. And it's not a surprise when you got Mayorkas sitting by Joe Biden's side about 10 years ago, the guy who's actually running the Department of Homeland Security right now, who is in turn refusing to enforce the Remain in Mexico policies. Yes, that's exactly what's going on and hiding in plain sight. And the math makes sense. It works. So now you have AOC coming in for cover in recent days, this was yesterday or the day before, saying that actually the right solution isn't building the wall, but to document the undocumented, which is the next step to them participating in those elections. And so it's, if somebody tells you this is what I'd like to do, then they take actions consistent with achieving what they'd like to do, and then consummate it by actually doing that very thing in changing the composition of the electorate and translating into who actually ends up voting in elections. You tend to believe that that's the most parsimonious explanation, not something else that we're otherwise struggling to figure out how to solve. Well, once we figured out how to solve that, we realize it's not a technical problem. And sometimes it's what bothers me in a lot of the border discussions is people will get into some sort of, I've done this too, I'll get into technical details. Do we need aquatic barriers in the Rio Grande? What do we think about the airlines? How should they be conforming the standards to the other people at the TSA, the thousands standing around, as I call them at the airport, or what are they doing? None of that matters. Actually eliminate the intention. Get the intentions in the right place. Say our intention is for people who enter this country illegally to not be in this country, technically it becomes actually a very easy challenge to solve. Militarize the southern border. We're militarizing other people's borders. How about militarizing our own with our own military? Militarize our border, as we are doing and should not be doing for others. Use the aquatic barriers in the Rio Grande. Stop giving money to Central America. Most of the people coming through Mexico, 80% of them didn't start in Mexico. Require each of those countries to build a border barricade all the way from Venezuela to the southern border of Texas. And birthright citizenship for kids of illegals. The 14th Amendment does not apply to the kids of illegals. I can go to the legal argument on this. They duped Donald Trump on this one. They said you need a constitutional amendment. Actually, you don't. Stop federal funding for sanctuary cities. We're paying for this. Our federal taxpayer money is actually paying for this facilitation of the domestic transfer to sanctuary cities. And then anybody in this country should be returned to their country of origin if you're here illegally. It's that simple. Now, they say there's only 6,000 ICE agents, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement agents. Well, again, if you read the law, there's a section in the law, I think it's 287G or something like this, that allows ICE agents to serve their warrants via local law enforcement. You just need, again, somebody running, ideally the entire executive branch, a president who tells the Department of Homeland Security and ICE to use that authority to work with local law enforcement. Now you got 1 million people, not just 6,000, to get the job done. So I gave you all of this as though the technical challenge was really the challenge. It's not. It's a challenge of intention. Right now there's been a longstanding intention to fundamentally change the composition of the U.S. electorate. If you call that a great replacement theory, CNN will have a conniption. If you say that, you know what, this is part of an electoral strategy, they would ask you what's so wrong with that. But either way, we got to at least air what it actually is to be able to have a debate whether this is desirable policy or not.
But if you say if you like it and if you support people coming in and replacing the local population, you of course get promoted by the corporate media.
Yeah.
There's crazy stats out there talking about how there's more illegals brought into the United States than actual babies born inside of this country. This is, to me, the weaponization of human trafficking, the introduction of the third world into the United States that's going to create a super elitist Uber class and a poor poverty everyone else class. This is far beyond just even a great replacement. This is essentially the destruction of this country from within. How can we roll this back? How can we go back from hundreds of thousands of people coming into this country in such a weaponized way?
Millions of people.
Yep.
Well, you can draft them into the military. I mean,
Send them to Ukraine. Huh?
Because the idea of mass deportations is like a storybook Nazi Germany visage. Like I can see the images of like newly deputized ICE agents, like a 19-year-old cop going and like grabbing some woman and pulling her out of her house and her screaming as the baby's lying on the ground. Like the world will not tolerate it, even our own country. As much as I'm not saying that deportations are off the table, but that's the imagery that would be swung with something like that. So what do you do? Send them into the army? Go let them earn their citizenship by fighting in the Ukraine? I don't know what the plan is.
The only thing I would say about that is, one is I do favor in substance doing this as humanely and respectfully as possible in substance, largely because for many of these people, it's not necessarily their fault, right? If you're sitting in Honduras or wherever and you got a U.S. president, an entire apparatus that's giving you a wink and a nod to come on over, who knows? Maybe if many of us were in their shoes, we would have done the same thing, especially we're parents of children who want better lives for our children. So I just think it's the right thing to do for this country because we're a nation founded on the rule of law. That's not something that's necessarily hostile to most of those millions are not otherwise innately bad people, but these are people, regardless of whether they're good people or bad people, we're a nation founded on the rule of law. So I can't, with my level of sort of moral clarity on this, I can't be a father of two sons in the White House, tell them they have to follow the rules when I'm leading a U.S. government that actively isn't following its own rules. And so I think as respectfully and humanely as possible, we have to return them to their country of origin. But Ian, there's a philosophical point here too, which is I think once we fall into the trap as leaders of trying to make decisions based on how we fear they will be portrayed, then we're done making the right decisions and we're just down the road of actually dancing to what we think we're going to be portrayed as. And it becomes circular. Whereas I think the job of a good leader is to do what is right, and when the public does not agree with you, to persuade them of the fact that that was still the right thing to do.
I do think the public, that are now very aware of the problem that's happening right now. I'm totally comfortable with mass deportations. I could definitely stomach watching mass deportations happen. I mean, we've been forced to stomach watching it happen the other way. I don't know if I'm broken on the inside, but I mean, reading these stories about people that can't afford groceries and yet are having to watch buses and schools emailing them saying, "Hey, don't come in today because we've decided to give the school that you've been funding for years with your tax dollars to illegal immigrants so they could sleep." I feel bad for those people. You know what I mean? I feel bad for the American people that are looking at are suffering at the gas pump, suffering at the grocery stores, and constantly being told by the left that you need to feel bad for someone else somewhere more than you feel bad for yourself. I think it's time for Americans to get a little bit more selfish in that regard and stop. And I think they will do. I think we're suffering enough now that people are going to.
Yeah, you got to militarize the border. There should be, I mean, I don't hear this enough in the rhetoric, but there should be machine gun nests pointing outward away from our borders saying, but then what you need is a leader at the top that's not waving people in, because if they're waving people in, no machine gun nest. We're not going to do that. But if I think that unless you tell them to stop coming, and I mean, you do it with more than just your words, that it's not good. The problem isn't going to.
Well, I appreciate what I would describe as Ian's big ask. And now we're going to walk way back from machine gun nests on the border to like maybe a fence.
Yeah. It's not even that. You statist authoritarian. It's more about not incentivizing this from happening. I mean, giving our resource, giving our tax dollars is essentially telling a lot of people, because I covered this situation on the ground in Mexico. I covered it in Europe, in southern Italy as well. I covered it all over the world, and all these people were told, "Hey, come on in. We're going to take care of you. We're going to give you all the opportunities. We're going to give you everything you want." But they don't tell them how essentially a lot of multinational corporations use them as slave labor. They don't tell them about a larger Koch brother plan that we used to have members of the Senate talk about, specifically from Vermont, that no longer bring it up as a key issue, as of course it is affecting everyone. It is affecting the blue-collar, middle-class Americans, and even more importantly, the poorest people in this country that are now left out literally in the cold.
It is a lie when they say that these are jobs Americans don't want. And we saw this when Donald Trump, I think the number was around 600 or so individuals deported from meat processing plants in the South. And then once several hundred people are deported, these companies say, we need to hire, so they have a job fair. Who shows up? Americans. And there were interviews, and you can Google and watch these videos. One man is asked, "Why are you coming to work at this plant? These are jobs that Americans don't want." And he goes, "Are you kidding? It pays $14 an hour. That's more money than I'm making right now. It's a good job for me." They want you to believe nobody wants these jobs as they give them away and drop the prices. And I got to say, it is these large multinational corporations that know they can pay people under the table dirt wages, and this is how they get cheap labor.
I just want to say one thing to Ian's point from earlier. I think it's important to understand what's going on, like on the ground in the southern border. Have any of you guys been to the southern border?
I should.
I have.
Oh,
yeah.
Because actually, you have.
Yeah.
So I think that probably affects your view, Candace. It definitely affects mine, having been there. It's not like you have this situation where illegal migrants or whatever are trying to cross the Rio Grande, sneak across, get a sprint, and then do you shoot them or not? It's not one of those situations. It's organized by our own government. It's facilities. It's actually what was striking about it is there's a lot of things in life that are pretty disorganized. Like starting a startup company is pretty disorganized. You guys maybe have a similar enterprise here that you started from a ground floor. I've seen a lot of things that are good in life are disorganized. This is not disorganized. This is striking because of how markedly organized it actually is. There's a process. They give you forms. Here's the box you check. You don't have to know English. They'll just tell you which box to check. Seeking asylum. Do you have to show proof of political persecution to get asylum? Not at all. It's just a procedure you go through. You know exactly go from point A to point B to point C. And so part of militarizing the southern border is the signal that we send, because that's the signal we're sending right now. Not only coming in, but then you can show up to Sanctuary City. You get baby formula, you get sneakers, $7,000 per migrant per month, converting South Shore High School on the south side of Chicago into an encampment for migrants. So I think part of what we're doing is offering a clear statement. We end federal funding for sanctuary cities. You know in advance that if your child is born in the United States, they're not going to actually enjoy citizenship. Oh, there's a wall and a fence and people wearing camo because they serve in the U.S. military facing outward. I'll never have the military carrying out domestic law enforcement functions, but facing outward against what currently is an organized invasion into our country. That's, I think, what's going on. And so this idea of, guys with guns and do you shoot or not, it's just not even close to what's happening right now. And I think part of this goes back to, it's not the technicals that matter. It's a statement of intention. If we believe, and we have a national consensus, and I believe we basically do, but the Democratic Party needs to align and admit it openly, that we do not want large numbers of illegal people entering this country, we absolutely and quickly can put an end to it as a technical matter. The problem is there's a statement of intention that not only is that not what much of the Democratic Party believes, that same wing actually believes that it is inherently a good thing. And the question is, how do you adopt policies that facilitating it while pretending like you actually wish for the opposite? That's really what this is about. So all the technical solutions become really details, footnotes, compared to really a debate about the intentions. Do you want a mass change in the composition of the U.S. electorate and the composition of the ethnic and linguistic background of people in the United States, or don't you? That's what's on the table.
When it comes to like using the law, you said earlier you want to stick with the law, like focus on the law. And really, as the president, that is like your job as the commander of the military, number one. But like law and order, I get. But sometimes law and order can be used for evil.
I agree.
And we need to be diligent or at least judicious about how we implement. I don't know if you want to call it prosecutorial or commandorial, expression. You get to pick and choose when you enforce the law. So like deportations, I'm still, my jury's out on this one right now.
It was for me for a while too, but I think that's the only.
I mean, I feel nothing.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.